In 2019, Paramount released the trailer to the long-awaited Sonic the Hedgehog movie, featuring an uncanny Sonic with small eyes and human teeth. Everyone hated it, and Sonic was immediately redesigned to be more faithful to the games. The original design was banished to Christmas sweaters and straight streaming movies. But imagine, if you will, a world where this change was never made, and they continue to make Sonic movies with this original design. You are moving into a land of both Shadow and Sonic, of redesigns and visual effects. You've just crossed over into the Green Hill Zone.
Before anyone asks, no, I'm not late in making a video about Sonic 3. I'm just early in making a video about Sonic 4. I'm too fast, that's my problem. Anyways, first I needed a 3D model of Ugly Sonic. I found this model here on Sketchfab, which worked great for what I was looking for. The one I downloaded was from Don McDonough, but most of the ones on Sketchfab look like the same model, so I don't actually know who made it first. It came with its own textures, but each area of him used a separate material, which would have meant I needed to add a new hair system for each material. To save myself that headache, I just used one material for the fur and painted on the different colors using texture painting. Even though I was going to add a hair system on top of him, I found a free fur material online and applied that to him. That way, if any of the base models shone through the fur, it would still look like he has fur. Next, I gave him some actual fur using Blender's hair system. Now I know Blender has a new fancy system that uses geometry nodes, but geometry nodes are scary, so I just used the old particle system. I also ended up adjusting his eyes a bit because they were too wide and appealing. He wasn't quite ugly enough. Next, I needed to animate him. Now in the past, I've used Mixamo for all my rigging and animating, but it has recently been made abundantly clear to me that I cannot be trusted to choose Mixamo animations. So this time I'm going to try to animate him the old-fashioned way, by hand. Now in order to animate him, I was going to need a rig. Then I remembered that a while ago, Blender Market was having a big sale for its 10th anniversary, and they were giving away a lot of stuff for free. One of the things they gave away was an add-on called Auto Rig Pro. It's basically Mixamo's Auto Rigger but on steroids, plus it's all inside of Blender. You can add points on your model and it automatically creates a skeleton from that. The thing that made it really helpful for this project is the fact that it can also do face rigging, so I can make him talk. This add-on isn't free anymore, but I'd still definitely recommend checking it out if you're interested in it. Also, they're not sponsoring me or anything.
That comes later.
Now I had a Sonic rig ready to go, but that's only half the coin. After all, where there is light, there must also be shadow. Thankfully, I've already done most of the work with Sonic since they look almost the same.
Excuse me? Why do you look like me?
I don't look like you. You look like me.
I just made him black and changed his chest fur with texture painting. Then I went into sculpt mode and used the pose brush to make his spikes point up. Now as a visual effects artist, I spend a lot of time at the computer, which means my posture usually looks something like this. Now if only I had something like a nice desk chair to help with that. This video is sponsored by Flexispot. The people at Flexispot were kind enough to send me their OC1 Fold-X chair. Now this chair is great. It's got adjustable lumbar support to help keep your posture healthy and reduce fatigue from sitting for hours at a time. It's also got a 4-inch thick memory foam cushion, an adjustable headrest, and probably my favorite feature, it's got a footrest. This thing can lean back 120 degrees. I could just take a nap right now. I mean, I won't, because I'm going to be productive and stuff, which this chair can help with, but I could, if I wanted to. Now, one of the biggest features this chair has is that it's foldable, which is great for a college student like me living in a dorm, because it basically takes up no space. And it's pretty easy to put together. It's mostly pre-assembled right out of the box. Even I could do it. If you're interested in checking out the OC1 Fold-X chair for yourself, you can check out the link down in the description. Thanks again to Flexispot for sponsoring this video. Now I'm ready to start working on the actual shots. So I'm planning on doing 3 shots for this, each with various levels of difficulty. I started off with the easiest shot, which is this one here, since there's not a lot of camera movement and Shadow doesn't have a ton of animation aside from his mouth. So first I lined up the model to match the original camera angle and started animating the mouth to match the original. I also made sure to add some small details like having his eyes move around a bit to give him some life. After that, I worked at recreating the lighting from the original shot. This was a bit tricky since they were surrounded by giant neon signs, but I knew I had to nail this since lighting is one of the most important things to make VFX look good. I feel like a lot of times when people complain about bad VFX, it's really just a case of flat lighting. It took me a little bit, but I eventually found a lighting setup that looked good, and I was ready to move on to everyone's favorite step of the process. Rendering. Now usually I try to render with Eevee, Blender's real-time engine. A lot of times you can get a fairly similar result to Cycles with it, But unfortunately, when it comes to rendering hair and fur realistically, Cycles just blows Eevee out of the water. The problem is Cycles usually takes forever to render. But what if I told you I found a way to render whole scenes in Cycles in what feels like no time at all? It's this crazy technique I like to call overnight renders. Here's how it works. First, you set up your render settings in the way you want them and give them an output location. One helpful setting to look for is the time limit, where you can tell Blender how long to render each frame for. The lower the number, the faster it will go, but the lower quality your render will be. For my scene, 5 minutes per frame looked pretty good. Then, once you have all your settings locked down, you can save your project 15 times out of paranoia, close all other tabs on your computer, offer a young goat to appease the Blender gods, then right before you go to bed, hit render. Then you get to wake up like a kid on Christmas morning and check on your render, only to realize you forgot to turn off the original clip in the background, so your render doesn't have an alpha channel, making it utterly unusable, and you get to do the whole thing all over again. The other two shots use pretty much the same technique. The only difference is that they had more complex camera movements. Since there's smoke and heat distortion in the original clips, I wasn't able to get a good camera track for these shots, so I had to eyeball it by lining up some geometry with the buildings on the background and then animating the camera so that it matched that. Once I had my camera, I went through all the same steps as before in animating and lighting them. Now that I had all my shots rendered, I could move on to my favorite step of the VFX process, compositing. So first, I needed to remove the original characters from the scene so that I could add my versions in.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but we need you-know-who.
If you've been following this channel at all, you know I am a DaVinci Resolve guy through and through. It's the whole reason I have this channel. And one thing to know about the Resolve community is we low-key have beef with Adobe. For us, it's like every time someone switches from an Adobe product to DaVinci Resolve, an angel gets its wings. But one thing that After Effects does have is the Content-Aware Fill tool, where you can select an object and it'll try its best to remove what was there. Now DaVinci also has a tool like this, but it's only in the studio version of Resolve, which I don't have. But the school I'm going to does have access to After Effects in its computer lab, and since I'm already paying an exorbitant amount of money to be here, I might as well take advantage of it. I'm not selling my soul out to Adobe, it's just a matter of accessibility for me. Now that I had my clean plate, I could add my render on top of that and do some basic compositing and fusion, like adding blur and matching the color. Now at this point I realized that there was something a bit lifeless looking about it. Then I remembered the old saying, the eyes are the window to the soul. In the original shots, they always have lights positioned so that there are highlights being reflected in the eyes. So to replicate that in my shots, I tracked the eyes and masked out little white dots. Now this isn't technically accurate, but it looked pretty well for my shots, and I think it added a lot of life to it. And after all that work, I had the final result. Please enjoy.
You're a colorful bunch.
You know, maybe it's just the Stockholm Syndrome talking, but after all the time I've spent looking at this design, I've gotten used to it. It just doesn't look ugly to me anymore. I definitely don't think the design change was some sort of marketing conspiracy. There really just comes a point when you're looking at something for so long that you lose all sense of objectivity with it. If you enjoyed this video and want to make some Sonic shots for yourself, then you can check out this video right here, where I go more in depth on recreating the speed trails effect from the movies.